Sounds good.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Unfiltered Vet Discussions. My name is Kelly, and I am being joined by Jenny, Beth, and David today. Here's our official wave, yes. You can find us at unfilteredvetdiscussions.com, which is our platform that leapfrogs you to all our social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can also then find us on Spotify, Amazon, Google, and other podcast systems. We would love to hear from you. If you have topic suggestions or just adding comments to whatever we're already commenting on, please join us. That would be wonderful. So today we are discussing the invaluable practice manager. What would a veterinary hospital do without them? So Jenny is going to give us a description a little bit more. I'm the title person today. Jenny is the flush out what that actually means. And then we'll kick off into a conversation. So Jenny, tell us all about it.
So it's funny because I get asked, I go and speak at like schools and things like that for eighth graders, looking at what classes they should take. And are you a veterinarian? Nope, I'm not a veterinarian. I'm a veterinary, a certified veterinary practice manager. And they're like, what does that mean? And I say, I do all the things that nobody else wants to do. That is my job. So this morning before noon, I changed the filters on our HVAC unit. I dealt with a client who had a return check. I helped extubate a dog and place a catheter in a dog. I went over the deposits from last night and reconciled our bank account. It's like this. Oh, I met with my head technician and another team member about schedule. I hired a 17-year-old, so I had to call the state to find out what regulations there are as far as radiology and keeping her safe as an under 18. So to me, when I think about the fact that my husband is a veterinarian, I'm a certified veterinary practice manager, what are our jobs? And he shouldn't be doing any of that. And it kills me when I go to these conferences and I talk to these veterinarians who own a practice and they're doing it all and they hate it. Or on the other hand, mostly I'm talking to practice managers, office managers who are not being utilized, who are only told half of the information that they need to be,
Yeah.
helpful. They're not given and allow, I'm a certified veterinary practice manager. That means that I have to have 24 hours of continuing education every year. And some of these aren't given an opportunity to do this, or they're technicians, so they're going to like technician continuing education, not management, marketing, law, ethics, those things. So I was feeling real good about myself this morning because I'm going, these are the things that nobody else needs to do. This is my job. And Beth, you have a practice manager that you can't live without. So as a veterinary owner, what is your experience?
Yeah, I would die without Kira, my practice manager. She's like you. She's a jack of all trades, and she's actually working on getting certified. That's one of her goals for the next couple of
Nice.
years, which I'm super supportive of. I'm gonna help put her through the schooling she needs to do it, because I think there's definitely value in being certified too. So she's working towards that. But for the first 5 years of my practice, my practice is like 11 years old, 12 years old now. And for the first 5 years, it was just me and my partner, my business partner, who's also a veterinarian. And so we did all the things, and
Yeah.
I hated it. I hated it so much. And I did not have a good work-life balance. And I was totally overwhelmed all the time because it's really hard to switch your hats from being a veterinarian to, okay, now sitting down with your financial person, going over all the numbers, to dealing with all of your interpersonal drama and all the problems with your staff, to, oh, the washing machine is not working, I have to fix it, to, I need to hire somebody. Did I place that ad? No, I ran out of time. And just like doing all of those things
Yeah.
while also trying to be a good leader and a doctor and, let alone having a life outside of work was a horrible balance for me. So my life got dramatically better once we put Kira into the position that she's in. And it has continuously grown and morphed over the years that she's taken on more and more and more. And we've now even added a second layer of management, that we have like a whole um, host of people that do like some of the middle management leadership to deal with some of the interpersonal stuff because we have a pretty big practice. I have like 60 staff members. So, we've just grown. As we've grown our management team, but honestly, like I don't know what I would do without Kira. Like she does so much for me so that I can be freed up to work like on my business instead of in my business, work on the direction of the practice, worry about what are our goals for the year and how can we implement that, worry about our social media because I enjoy doing that. Like it has allowed me to have such a better balance that I don't have to be dealing with, like when the washing machine breaks, which is
Yeah.
important, but like I don't want to have to care about that.
No.
Now, and keeping in mind, I guess, not every practice can afford a manager.
Right.
So yes, a smaller solo practice, you work with a head tech, a head receptionist, and the owner has to do more. As you grow, then you can get that part-time manager and delegate, and then get bigger and have that full-time manager, or maybe even be able to afford the CVPM, which I'm a big fan of. And then it can go, the pendulum moves in the opposite direction though, and you can get so big, what you just mentioned, that the management layer continues to grow and we see profitability drop because then the support staff as a percent of revenue, instead of being 17 to 19%, the support staff layer is 17 to 19%, but there's another 4 or 5% going to administrative levels and because you're creating this inventory manager that's all they do, and then an HR manager, and that instead of the more distributive, yeah, everybody's going to contribute with different tasks. You're not there, it sounds like yet, but I see it in the numbers. It becomes very management top heavy. Is a common occurrence, especially for a lot of practices after they cross that 3 million revenue. That's where there's a lot more moving parts, it seems, especially when each doctor's only doing about 450. If you're at 3 million in revenue because each doctor's doing 900, you're not likely top heavy. But you get 3 million and up in revenue and the full-time doctors are only doing 400, 450, there's a lot more people involved in there and the need for management grows.
So do
And
you
I'm
think,
generalizing too, so
right?
which is dangerous.
Do you think so? A lot of like you talked about the inventory manager. So I have a receptionist. She's a customer service representative and an inventory manager. And she handles a lot of my large animal clients. She's kind of the one who makes a lot of those large animal appointments and things like that and handles our big barns and, getting payment for those, making sure that we're doing everything that they all need. So she kind of splits that delegation. So I don't find that like I have two head technicians who are also CVTs. So one of them's downstairs doing surgery right now, but she also handles the scheduling,
Right.
right? And things like that. So do you find that is a little bit of a better, I guess where I'm going with this is I find like managers who only manage and are not on the floor don't have as great of a pulse on the practice.
Yeah.
So like I said, today I was helping, I have a technician who's out this week. Well, I hope not all week, but she's got a real nasty stomach bug and she was out last week. So I'm kind of covering for her. I'm not a CVT, so there are things that I do not do, but I'm down there, I'm on the floor, I'm seeing the flow of things. Sometimes I'll cover at the front desk. I always make sure that I'm kind of down there and in the practice. Oh, look, David just
But
gave me a
I got to
finger
jump
wave.
in on that
Yeah.
because, especially where you started, I get you do the things everyone else doesn't like to do. You are too expensive to be changing HVAC filters, to be answering phones, to be doing, and I talk with practice managers about this. You're the manager. You need to manage. That's what you get paid to do. Now, husband, wife, that's different, but you're utilizing your manager, and oftentimes the practice elevates from within. Now the receptionist becomes an assistant, becomes a technician, becomes a head tech, becomes a practice manager. So they know how to do everything, and they feel the need to jump in because there's a fire and I can put it out. as opposed to, hey, you need to go take care of this because I have to go do things that are at my pay grade,
I feel like
right?
you're talking directly to me right now, David. Like
He
right
definitely
in
is.
my
He
right. I
definitely
feel like
is.
right. There's like really a Jenny now. Yeah, that's
Jenny,
me.
we
One
have to
hundred
tell
percent.
you that
Right.
you have better things
Yeah.
to do than change the HVAC filter. This actually is so parallel to the types of conversations I have with Kira all the time because she's like you, Jenny. She wants to help. She is a people
Mhm.
pleaser. And part of the reason she is so good at her job is she's very in tune with what's going on in the hospital and can see who needs help and who's drowning. And it is a constant source of, I want to say conversation because it's not really an argument because I don't
Right.
actually know the answer. Maybe one of you can give me the answer. But we always struggle with like, what is better? Is it better for her to be seen on the floor when they're struggling, to jump in and help because for that sense of camaraderie, for making sure we're maintaining our culture, for them to make sure that they see her as like someone who is there to help when they need help? Or is it a better use of her time for her to try to move the other people around and delegate those things so that she can work on the higher level things? Because really, she shouldn't be the one sitting there answering the phone or the one who's changing the filters in our HVAC or the one who is, doing the things that someone else can definitely do when then that's taking her away from like the time it takes her to write up the reviews, which is something only she can do. Like that is a really valuable task that she can't delegate. Whereas there's other stuff that she can because Kira and I talk about this all the time. I just made her do like that exercise where you write down everything you do and then we're going to sit down and go through it and I'm going to be like vicious like this is not your job anymore, this is not your job anymore, because she does so many things that I'm like that does not need to be you, and I'd rather free her up to help her feel more balanced because she's overwhelmed at times, and then also be able to work on some of the projects for the business side of it and like how to move our practice forward instead of having to be doing those things. So this is, I absolutely feel this in
Yeah, and I
this.
agree that contributing to the culture and being seen is hugely important and probably fulfilling for her, meeting that need. I guess always a work in progress, but it strikes me that the test would be, does she have enough time to do the planning and the macro management and the management? If she's filling those needs and still doing that, then that's fine. But if that forward management administrative is suffering because too much time's going over there, then yeah, going through is probably appropriate.
I think it
Focusing
is.
on the priorities. Sorry, that's what we try to do here on our team. I mean, we're not in a hospital, and David, you're not in a hospital, but
Right.
businesses still have some similarities underneath the hood, right? And you can't do everything, David, like you were saying. And it's exciting to chase squirrels and spandex in the bright and shiny to fix things, right? Because it
Now
is.
I have a picture of you in my head chasing squirrels in
In
spandex.
spandex, right? Red sparkly spandex to be exact. That's in
I
my
don't
head.
know how the squirrels put them on, but that's an interesting.
I couldn't get them to slow down enough to ask that question, but it's cute. So, what are your priorities today? And sometimes internally, that's hard because you want to do it all, or you want to feel valued, or you want to feel connected, or you want to do the things that gives you that adrenaline hit. Like, hey, that made me feel really good doing whatever. And we don't always want to do the thing. We don't always want to slow down, and we don't always want to take our time, and we don't always want to complete the task to completion because we want to run off to something else because there's another fire burning, right?
I
But
think
managing those goals. So Kira knows what her top three goals are once you devastate her to-do list and massacre it with red lines
I'm gonna
going,
murder it.
you're going to murder it.
Ugh.
and then set
Yeah,
it on fire when you're done. She'll be in tears, but you made your point. No.
right.
I think my whole thing is it is a very fine balance. And I do agree, right, David, that so I have the time to get the things done that I
Right.
need to get done. and I'm still home at a decent hour, unless, right, we're really like this stomach bug that's going through the practice. When three people are out, I'm on the floor. That's the way it is. But I still get my things done. I still, and a lot of it is what brings me joy, because for the longest time, I did kind of separate myself from my team. But the numbers don't bring me joy. Sitting there looking at spreadsheets and reconciling, this doesn't bring me joy. I know, David, I'm sorry. I know. I know it brings you joy. I'll let
Where
you
have
do
I
it.
gone wrong?
But it's not that I'm a people person. I love people. I started as a CSR in the 90s, right? Answering the phones, dealing with clients. I love it. I still love it. If you ask me where my happiest place is, it's sitting at the front desk answering the phones, which just shows how unhinged I am, because nobody wants that job. That is a miserable job. People are staring at you. You're handling, all the rooms and all the check-ins and checkouts and phones and, but I love it. It's what I love. And so
Yeah.
I actually enjoy stepping into that role. I love my lab station. Every time I'm down there acting like an assistant, I take over the lab station. I yell at my team when they go to run a 40X or a wellness, and I'm like, step away. This is my section. I feel like NCIS, Abby from NCIS, like doing all the scientific thing, because
Oh,
that's
yeah.
not right. Like I'm cool and I'm doing these scientific things. And that brings me joy. Being with my team brings me joy. Checking on the culture, that's big for me. And I know that when the bosses are there, the culture kind of shifts to what you want it to be. If I worked in a practice once that got bought by an associate, and her style of management was different than mine, and hers was very non-existent. It was, well, I'm the boss now, so I can show up at 10 o'clock in the morning. Well, that shapes your culture. So when my husband's there, when I'm there, it helps kind of keep things on track. And yes, my team does a great job because we talk about this and we work together on it. But I think that, when you're there, it helps. I also think I have delegated some of the things that I don't enjoy, like social media. I hate social media. I don't like being on it. I was horrible about posting. I have a great team member who I realized had the ability to do this job, and she has taken it and run with it for the last year. She'll do them ahead of time and have them scheduled to go out. We have such a following on Facebook now. She got us linked up with Instagram, which I could never figure out. She's really taken that and run. And so that is one thing off my plate. And Beth, your job that shouldn't be done by your practice manager is being medical director, right? And I think there are some practice managers out there who are like, I can handle this. No, 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 no. That should not be your job. What do you do, Beth, as a medical director? Like, what do you feel like is because this is what my husband is, our medical director, and we have very specific lines that I do not cross.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the biggest piece for me in that arena is like making sure my doctors feel supported, making sure everybody's practicing the same level, the same standard of care, making sure a team is following those same standards, like kind of overseeing how the practice is running and like what our goals as a practice are as far as like the medical side of it. Like we always try to track our KPIs and like look at some different things that we want to grow, and then I'm like lean into that education with the team of what that looks like. To be honest, I probably need a better description because I don't have a job description. I probably should for that area because I just sort of do whatever needs to be done as far as like managing the team and where the medicine should be and like making sure my doctors are all okay. And I do like check-ins with them every quarter because they have a base salary plus production. So like I oversee that. So like a lot of that stuff that I feel like I really couldn't easily delegate, although maybe you guys are going to be like, no, you shouldn't be doing that. But some of that stuff is like my job in that arena.
Yeah.
And then also like just big picture of like where the practice is going and what's important to us as far as our culture. But we work together on some of that. But most of the stuff that has to do directly with like the doctors and where the medicine should be, that's kind of like my baby.
And I would agree. I think that's every Monday morning, my doctors have a doctor meeting and they go over cases, they go over any new protocols. That way, I always say we have all these doctors that have different personalities. So if you don't like my husband, don't worry, I got one that you'll like. But they're all still going to treat your patient the same way. You're still going to get the continuity of care
Yeah.
within the
Right.
practice. Our technicians meet and my head technicians are in charge of that. I'm not in charge of that. And sometimes we'll even have doctor technician meetings. I'm not in charge of those. My doctors run those with my techs to make sure that technically they're on the same page. My head receptionist runs the CSR meetings. So I don't have to do those things. And I don't sit in on those doctor meetings unless they need me to. If there's a question about like law, ethics, something like that, then they'll call me in for my opinion or what I know. But I do think that, right, there has to be job. You just said the word job description.
Yeah.
There
And
are
if you're
there are
going to
not
bring,
enough of them.
yeah. And I think in coming back to the focus on the managers and utilizing your manager as the practice owner, because I talk to folks, oh, I'm going to hire a manager. How much is that going to cost? I'm like, well, have you written a job description? No, I'm just going to hire a man. Well, you have to start with what are you going to have the manager do? What are he or
Yeah.
she responsible for? And can you give up the control to empower them to do the job? Because if not, then all they're doing is putting out fires, and you're paying a lot for somebody that's not protecting the practice. The manager's job is to protect the practice, protect the team, grow it forward, and target the goals set by the owner. And yet I see some where the managers delegated the owner's delegated everything to the manager, just doesn't want to have any responsibilities. And then others where, the manager gets frustrated, sees things that need to be fixed, shares that with the owner, and it falls on deaf ears. And they're underutilized.
David, do you see any of this in the numbers when you look at practices who have practice managers who don't, who have like medical director roles or don't, or does that come out in the P&L sheet in any way, or is it more just how the business is run?
Yeah, you can because the scheduling and people are using overtime unnecessarily instead of fixing the problem, where there's too many people being on the team's too big, or the inventory is not being managed well because the person was never given the skills. And actually, I'll give a plug to Nicole Clausen's new book. Woohoo!
Oh, nice. I didn't know she did a book. That's
Yeah,
excellent.
it just came out. We just got our copy.
Nice.
But you have to teach the person, and the manager doesn't necessarily have to be the one to teach them, but should get the content so that they can learn it. And you always delegate, but you have trust but verify, right? So, and that's where like the Vet Partners Team Utilization Guide, which is free, helping people like we've talked about before. The doctors lean on the licensed techs lean on their assistants, and you delegate as much as possible so that at each point in the process, we can do more of what we're skilled at doing. And getting your manager that education and the awareness. And if they're not a member of BHMA, why not? And
Should
even
be.
being pursuing the credential, whether you're going to hit it or not, you can at least get the education and tap into those online resources.
You can
I
get the
think it's
job
often,
descriptions.
yeah, and
They
including
they have
job
job
description.
descriptions. You just take it and tweak it and make it yours.
Uh,
That is so true. And I think a lot of when you talk about delegation, I think that we're all afraid to give up control. There's not a single person here that doesn't, right? You don't want any control. Like, let it all go. No,
Yeah.
like we can't help it. We want to. And when you are so invested in your practice, that's your baby, right? You want to oversee everything. And it's interesting because I now have, over the years, I have team members that are literally as vested in this practice as my husband and I are. They take it that seriously that,
Nice.
when someone says something about our practice, it is like a punch to the gut to them because this is their baby too. So in delegating, we see that as a loss of control, but we need to change that mindset to say we're giving these people autonomy over their job. We're giving them a purpose. We're giving them a piece of this baby for them to care for. And it helps build that loyalty. It helps build that trust within your culture, within your practice. And it's so, to me, that is, I don't, they know my dental x-ray machine broke. My head technician handled it. She called other people to have it out repaired. She doesn't have to go through me and double check with me because she knows that we need that piece of equipment. Now, when it comes time to actually buy a new machine, then yes, we have to sit down and have a conversation. How much is it? Do we have the money? Do we have to finance it? How do we go about it? What are we going to do in the meantime? All of these things. But I've given her this permission to already come to me with all of those answers so we can sit down and all move so much faster. She loves this practice like her own. That x-ray machine is her baby, right? So I just think that we see delegation as a loss of control, but we have to look at it as not a loss of control because you're trust and verifying it. You know that these people can do these things because you worked your way up. You're not just throwing them in the deep end and saying swim. You have these job descriptions in place, hopefully, but you're giving them some pride. And we all want to do something and feel special and feel needed. And I think that's something that maybe other industries are as bad at this, but I see it all the time in the veterinary industry that these people just don't feel valued. Team members don't feel valued.
They're not honored as a human being, is what I see in multiple industries, not just the veterinary industry. I personally feel we've been taught to dehumanize people and treat them as a number and not as a human being, right? And also to live in the land of fear and not in the land of empowerment, right? So, Jenny, what you're talking about is you're telling the person consciously or unconsciously, and Beth, you probably do the same thing, is I honor you. I think you're an amazing human being. I think you have the intelligence to handle the job. I'm here to support you because I actually have fixed this damn machine 10 times before you. So if it's a problem, I may have a shortcut and a band-aid, right? Just by personal learning curve, I'm ahead of you on this one. But go see what you can do. And if you fail, that's okay too. And I'm not going to bash you for that. I'm not going to dehumanize you. I'm not going to trample all over you with negative behaviors because, and honestly, that's how we learn. I mean, one of my first jobs, the owner looked at me and said, I expect you to F up. I expect you to have problems. And if you aren't, you're not doing your job. So I want you to go out there, but I also want you to tell me when something goes sideways so I can help you. Don't put it underneath the rug, right? And that's what I hear you all saying with how you choose to treat employees. And that's amazing. And to further on to that, I say good morning online to all my employees every single day if I'm here. And a couple of them, like when they're new, they're like, wow, you actually spoke to me. I'm like, why wouldn't I? And they're like, but you treated me nice and you said good morning. I'm like, holy shit, if that's the bar, it's low. Right?
And I crossed it.
I didn't even have to work very hard on that one, right? But I think people come in bruised and battered, Jenny, to answer your question. It's just not the veterinary space. I think as a whole out there, we're used to being beaten to a pulp and not treated and kindly, with respect, with love, with generosity, with curiosity. And when you find a place to do that, people are like, wow, I found home. Please don't let me leave. I care about it here.
I find it interesting how often it circles back to just being like a kind human. Like, because, this whole conversation is about how to properly utilize your management team, but like so much of that stems from being able to treat the people who work for you or with you with kindness and respect. And by doing that, that's how you empower them. And then that actually makes them better leaders. It makes them do their job better, they're more efficient. They learn from their mistakes instead of being held back by them. And I think so much of that is, you have to have that trust in people and give them a chance and be kind to them. Like it's just amazing to me how much of it circles back to that. Because then, like, I think people like make the mistake of thinking it's like the fluffy stuff that doesn't matter. But like really at the end of the day, like it's probably one of the most important things of having a successful business is that you are able to let go of some of that control. And the only way that you're able to do that is if you're trusting of your people and they trust you. And you're not going to have that relationship unless you are kind to one another and you can work together. Like that's the way you're going to be most successful. So to even be able to trust someone like I trust Kira was because we have a really good relationship where we can give each other positive or negative constructive feedback and be able to have that open line of communication, which we couldn't do if we didn't have like a level of respect and kindness for one another. And I think that has allowed me to teach her to be the leader that she is, which she's now then teaching those below her. So it's allowed sort of a trickle down effect of us being able to work effectively together, which then ultimately at the end of the day, the whole goal is to have the practice be successful, right? To have it be financially successful and stable. But like so much of that goes back to these like interpersonal relationships to be able to effectively have people doing their jobs.
It's
Well
funny.
said.
Peter
Yeah.
always talks about EQ over IQ, right? I just went to a talk at Western with him and Rob Best, and they were talking about because so many people in the veterinary space are IQ driven, right? That's how you get into vet school. You have a 4.0, very scientifically mathematical brained, very factual that. And the reality of it is, yes, that's important, but how we talk to our clients, how we talk to our team members, how we talk to each other. Yes, I can look at, our vets can look at this dog and say, yep, that's a torn cruciate. I could tell by the way it walked in the room. But you have to get that client to understand, what does that mean? How did this happen? Now what do we do? Here are our different options, different types of surgery, maybe a brace, look at the age of the animal, and all of that comes from trust. And then they trust in the veterinary team to do their job. Well, it's the same thing as a practice trusting their manager to do their job. The manager trusting I trust my head techs, I trust my CSRs to put out those fires. So I'm not the only one putting out those fires. So I can focus on how do we just not have those fires to begin with. You're always going to have fires. There's nothing that we can do. But if you do strategic planning, you can say, okay, we're going to avoid this in the future, so we don't have to keep putting out the same damn fire every day. We can douse it out for good. Now we're good to move on. And then, right, just cut it off. You got
It's
a fire
done.
extinguisher, it's done. But it's one of those things that if you're not trusting in each other, all you're doing is just putting out, you're reactive, you're not proactive, I guess is the whole thing. And I think that our world is very much set up that way, that we're very reactive. We're not looking at the future. But if, Beth, if you had kept on that path of being the owner and the manager and all of this stuff, that's why we see high divorce rates. That's why we see high alcoholism. That's why we see drug abuse. That's why we see suicide. It's overwhelming. And you get yourself a team that you can trust and let them do their thing. And then you get to do your thing, which is be a veterinarian, which is what you went to school for, which is what you're passionate about. And that's what we should all do, what we're passionate about. David, you with the numbers, have at it.
That's a good wrap there. I think you just put
It
a
is.
bow on it.
Yeah,
Well done.
let them do their thing,
Let
trust
them.
them, and empower them, right?
Let them.
That's kind of like the very
There
short
you go.
version of it, right? So we will leave it there today. And if you all have any suggestions on letting them do their thing or empowering them, or even saying, hey, I'm stuck. I don't know how to let them do their thing because that's foreign country to me, right? I don't even know how to go there. Drop us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Until later, we have the royal wave, right?
Bye.
Yeah. And we will say adieu from Unfiltered Vet Discussions. Talk to you all later. Bye.